Board, have you had a chance to look at the agenda? Okay.
I make a motion, we approve tonight's agenda.
You have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, well, we have an agenda.
All right, so again, I'll present from,
Okay.
there we go. We're on now. Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the board, I'm going to present the recommended budget for the 24-25 school year. Again, this information you're getting now is the overview of the budget, and you, at your place, you should have a budget book that has more details as to the specifics of this year's budget. So as we go through this, we'll give the 30,000-foot view, so to speak, of the budget, and then again, you have the budget book with you. And as we go through the next couple of weeks, we have a meeting on the 7th to, as a school board retreat, to discuss the budget. If you have any questions, between now and then, feel free to reach out to the chair and run all questions through him, and then I'll be glad to answer those questions. But more of that at the end. But again, we did this budget just in a way trying to, we won't please everybody, but maximize what we have. Our CARES funding is expiring, so we try to take some of those positions that are in CARES and put them into our operating budget. So as we go through this, you'll see some of that information as we go through the budget tonight. So our main priorities, again, focus on class size reduction below the standards of quality, continue to build programs to provide opportunities for our students during their school year and after they graduate, and then maintain competitive pay scale with the surrounding school divisions. So again, our budget's we have 8 sections of our budget. We have an enrollment section, General Assembly mandates, summary of revenues, division pay increases, summary of expenditures, CARES and all-in funds, the Senate scenario, and then the closing information. So for enrollment, so if you look at enrollment, we have 3 numbers we work off of. We have the state, which is what the governor and the House and Senate are building their budget off of, which is 3712.9. We have Weldon Cooper, which has a short-term, mid-term, and long-term numbers there on enrollment, and then we have our own projections. Our projections are 3775. The state is at 3712. We're going to build our budget off of the state numbers because that gives us a little bit of a leeway in there. If we go high and our numbers are lower than that, then we're in a deficit. I'd rather go low and have more students and be in a surplus. If we do have 3775, that's the number we maintain, that would give us around a $550,000 surplus in our budget if we base it off of the governor's budget of 3712. So it's good to have a little bit of cushion in there, and that's why we're going to base it off the governor's, just in case our projections are off. So again, the Weldon Cooper projections, this just shows the 3 where they came up with their numbers, the short term, the midterm, and the long term numbers. But you can look at all these projections from Weldon Cooper, and I think you'll notice that over time, they're projecting an enrollment decline for us over the next few years. This does not take into account the new subdivisions coming in, things like that in Madison Heights area. So I think once those subdivision rooftops start getting built, you might see these projections change in the future, but this is their projections based off of last year's data. General Assembly mandates. So we have 3 sections here. We have the governor, we have the House, and the Senate. The governor's budget, which is what we're building our budget off of because we don't have enough information from the House and Senate to build it off of theirs yet. So we're basing ours off the governor. The governor's is worst case scenario for us. We know the House is better than the governor's proposed budget, and we know the Senate is better than the governor's proposed budget as far as funding for the school system. So we're going to build our budget off the worst case scenario, and if more funding comes in, we're able to do more with the additional funds. So in the governor's budget, the governor proposed a 1% bonus for all SOQ staff for this year. And then for the FY26, a 2% pay increase. He recommended expanded staffing requirements for reading specialists in K through 8, and he recommended expansion of VPI slots. In the House has came up when they announced their budget last Sunday, 3 3/8. Now, why they came up with 3 3/8, we don't know. It's driving Kim crazy. Trying to figure out the math on 3 3/8. But a 3.375% increase in pay for SOQ staff for 25, and the same thing for 26, as well as tiered staffing ratio for English learner-based proficiency and a reading specialist requirements in grades 4 through 8. But again, we have very few details other than that on the House. They have not released a lot of information as to how much funding we would get and so forth. So we really can't make projections based off the House, what they have released thus far. They are supposed to be into committees the next couple of days and kind of trying to work and kind of come up with a combined spending bill, but they're still working through that. So hopefully we'll get more from them. From the Senate recommends a 3% compensation increase for 25 and a 3% compensation increase for 26. It also removes the support cap. Removing the support cap for us would add about $734,000 to our budget. So that's big. It also increases staffing for at-risk, which would increase our budget by $970,000 for our at-risk funding increasing. And it also requires an EL staffing standard of 22 per 1,000 students. Right now, we have 49 EL students receiving services and 67 total EL students, and we have 3 EL teachers. So we are well within the guidelines that would come out from the state. We would not be required to hire any additional EL staff based off our numbers and the 22 per 1,000. Summary of revenues. So right now, the governor's proposed budget has about $39,319,849. The House, we have no idea because it's not been released yet. But the Senate has given us proposed budget of $41,745,363, which is an increase of about $2.425 million from the Senate and the governor's budget. And we'll talk more about that here in a little bit later. But right now, there's no calc tool released on the Senate budget or the House, and there's no other information around. So as soon as we get more information, hopefully by the 7th at our retreat, we'll have more information, and we will share that with you. If we get updates between now and then, and we get a new calc tool comes out, things along those lines, we will run the calc tool and give you more information as we get the information. But right now, we don't have any other really information that we can share because we just don't have it from the state yet. When we met with, the Region 5 met with Dr. Coons on Tuesday, and she said they're having a hard time right now putting all the stuff from the House and Senate into a calc tool because it's in areas and categories that don't match up with the calc tool. So they're trying to figure all that out right now. So they're working on it at the state level, but so far we haven't received any new information. Revenues. In the governor's proposed budget, state revenue was $33,515,346. State sales tax, $5,804,503. Federal grants, $3 million. CARES funds, that's highlighted in yellow for you, so I'll come back to that in a second, is 1.8. Child nutrition is 2.85. Other local funds, 193,427, and Board of Supervisors is 16,402.89 for a total revenue of $63,631,015. Important to note the CARES funds, we're drawing those down because that's the first part of the high school renovation project is being paid out of CARES. So we received a $800,000 bill last week, and we anticipate another bill coming in the next week or so for that too close to $1 million. So the number in the CARES fund line is going to be reduced and may be gone by the time we approve a budget because as we're spending that down. So just know that the CARES funding is going to be dropping as well as the total revenues will be dropping as the CARES funds drop as we move through the spring into the summer. Division pay, again, based off the governor's budget, we have put in a 1% employee bonus for SOQ and non-SOQ positions, and we've also adjusted the pay table for operations and some maintenance positions to adjust their pay table. If you look at how we look at our pay, 85.4% goes and it's going into personnel, and 14.6 is everything else besides personnel. Summary of expenditures. So if you look at what we're going to be asking for, want to add 9 positions to the operating budget. Again, there's the 1% employee bonus. There's health insurance. We're going to increase the employer portion to 7.5% and not increase the employee health insurance. So employee health insurance will stay the same. We're going to look at, again, select operations and maintenance pay scale adjustments. Under contracted services, We're going to increase in contracted behavioral services. In a Southern Air contract is required to go up this year as part of their contract. That number goes up this year. Increase in student activity audit fees, our E-rate consultant. We're increasing maintenance project funding per operation plan. We're adding communication services for GPS tablets, and our insurance increases for auto, property, accident, and liability. Insurance and workers' compensation all has increased. We have to increase funding for that. On the classroom instruction side, we're adding a slot for the STEM Academy for the junior class. We're adding funding for the James River Association trips. We're adding funding for the Trout in the Classroom expenses. We're adding funding for additional textbook funds, instructional and CTE. We're adding funding for software increases, technology local match funding for VPSA, and high school athletic allotment. So under expenditures, we're adding VPI classroom teachers, 1 teacher and 1 instructional assistant. Again, that's due to additional slots we're receiving through VPI. We're adding 2 elementary teachers. We're adding 1 secondary teacher, the AEC middle school program that we talked about the pilot. That's just, we're going to put that in the budget and not just have it as a pilot. We're adding the 0.5 in-school detention shift from CARES fund. So all these I'm labeling off now. We already have people in these positions. We're just moving them from CARES or another category into our operating budget because CARES funding is going away. A 0.5 elementary teacher, that's a shift from Title II, and that allows us to have additional money for to pay our mentors, to have more mentor teachers. So right now, if we keep it there, if we keep that position as a Title II funded position, we don't have enough money to really have more mentors to work with our new teachers. By shifting that over into the operating budget, we're able to have that money. Those funds from Title II go to mentors. We're going to add a supervisor of counseling, add a school and community engagement specialist, and that's a shift from the community schools grant. Community schools grant does expire, so we have to move it into the operating budget. Adding of a Medicaid coordinator and adding of director of recruitment, retention, and professional development. We're going to reduce an instructional specialist and shift that into all in Virginia. We're going to add a half-time FTE clerical position, shift it from Title I, and we're going to reduce a half-time clerical position. So it'll be a total increase of 9 FTEs is what we're proposing. So looking back at this year's budget, I think it's important to know where we were this year and where we are right now. This year's budget was $63,971,701. Our school operational budget is $2,003,942. Is going to increase. Our child nutrition budget is increasing 23. Federal adult programs are staying as they are, and CARES is reducing by $2.368 million. So our CARES money is being spent out. Other expenses are going into our operating budget for this year. So this coming year, our budget's going to be $63,631,15, which is a $340,686 reduction from last year's budget. So actually, our budget's lower this year than last year because of the CARES funds that are going out. By the numbers, 76% of our budget's going to be on instruction, 9% operations and maintenance, 8% pupil transportation, and 7% administration and health. So again, 3/4 of our budget is in instruction. Get into CARES and all in Virginia funds. The current year, we have 6.2 FTEs funded through CARES. We have a school counselor funded through CARES. We have an attendance officer funded through CARES, instructional specialist, CT coordinator, ISD instructor, and a grant writer. Again, it's important to note that the CARES funding ends September 30th of this year. So anything is in CARES goes away. So those funds have to be spent by September 30th. And we're well on our way to having them spent by September 30th. So we look at all in Virginia. So all in Virginia, came to us, those funds came to us in late September, and we can carry those funds over. So we spend all in Virginia funds right now. They've been spent on our bridge program, but we can also going to use them for some summer school programs, but we can also add them for positions. So all in Virginia had 3 categories. We had tutoring and learning acceleration. We had a literacy act section, and we had a chronic absenteeism section. So our funding came in 3 different chunks. So under the tutoring and learning acceleration, if you see at the bottom, we have CARES, This means this year's in CARES, next year it's going to be in there, or the operating budget, or a new position. So if you look at the key. So right now, we're going to move an elementary instructional specialist in literacy and math from CARES into All in Virginia. We're going to move a secondary instructional specialist in literacy and math into All in Virginia. That's from the operating budget into All in Virginia to save room in the operating budget. Our CTE coordinator is going to move from CARES into All in Virginia, and our school counselor is going to move from CARES into All in Virginia. Under literacy, a middle school reading specialist will be a new position. We're required to have that as part of the Virginia Literacy Act as a requirement under a code. So we have to have that person in middle school. So we're adding that under the literacy section. And then under chronic absenteeism, we're going to move the attendance officer from CARES into All in, and then we're going to have a new position called a connections coordinator who will focus on attendance and homebound to make sure those students are getting their needs are being met better, as far, especially with their homebound work, and if they're on Admentum and things of that nature, tracking that to make sure that work is being done and completed and following up with them on that. Because I know it's been an issue for us over the past couple of years is tracking those students in Admentum. So we really want this person to kind of focus there with a focus on attendance and again with our homebound population. All right, so the good news, if the Senate version comes through, everything so far we've been talking about what we have based on the governor's budget, and that's what we have to work off of. But just so you know what the Senate version is going to give us. So the Senate budget increases our funding again by $2.425 million, okay? Again, for us, just so you know, a 1% increase in pay for us, it costs us about $400,000 for every 1% increase in salaries. So for us to do a 3% raise without any assistance from this is $1.2 million to do a 3% increase, roughly $400,000 per percent. So what's going to happen if the Senate version comes through? So again, just to reiterate, the governor's budget is worst case. We think the House budget's somewhere between the governor and Senate. We think the Senate version is probably our best case scenario, but we do feel they're all going to be above, either one of those will be above the governor's proposal. So if the Senate bill comes through, we eliminate the bonus because the bonus is taken out of their budget, but it does do funds a 3% pay increase. It does fund, in that we would fund a school counselor, an attendance officer, and operating, and take them out of the other places, out of All in Virginia. We would increase funding for mental health supports. We would provide funding for an additional bus. We would provide additional funding for health insurance to get us above the 7.5 so we could actually build our reserve up in the health insurance. We will continue towards our goal of fully projecting health costs and review employees' contributions. One thing we have noticed, our contributions are a little higher from the employee side in some of our neighboring divisions, so we're really looking to see how we can reduce our employee part of that to make it more in competitive with our local divisions. So we're looking at that as well. So if the Senate version comes through, we think we'd have enough funds, we could actually look at doing some of that as well. And then targeted adjustments to sections of our teacher pay scales. We know that year 15 to year 25, compared to our neighboring divisions, we're a little bit behind in those ranges. So we'd like to take, if the Senate budget comes through, we would want to focus those funds towards those areas as well. Okay? So this is, I think the Senate version is probably the best case scenario. Again, I have not seen the House version, and the governor's version is worst case. But again, our budget is going to be built off the worst case. Closing information. So all the information here will be posted on websites and social media, school messenger, and public meetings. Our future meetings, we have our March 7th, we have the board retreat. March 14th is a public hearing as part of our regular board meeting. It'll be at the beginning of our regular board meeting on the 14th. March 15th, we have a work session if needed. So if we don't get where if you don't feel you're comfortable on the 7th, and you feel we need to meet again on the 15th, that is penciled in. And then March 19th, I present to the Board of Supervisors. And then I ask that if you have questions, so you all may have the same question. So if you have questions, read through the book. get those to Mr. Terry, then he can kind of get them in order and get them to us so we can have your questions answered. We'll either push them out to you during the 2-week break we have between now and the retreat, and we have information more at the retreat as well. So if you have questions about when you get into the budget book and really start digging into the budget, if you have questions, again, if you don't mind giving the information to Mr. Terry, then he can relay that to us so we can not have the same question asked 7 times, so just be asked once, and we can still get the information out to you.
So, Board, I will ask that if you do have questions, get them to me by like the 29th from tonight. And that way it'll give me a day or so to tally them all together and get them to Dr. Wells. He has about a week to see what he's got.
All right.
Thank you.
So this concludes my part of the presentation. I do want to thank Ms. Laconich and Ms. Monet Davis for their work on preparing the budget this year. I asked her if she wanted to do the presentation, and she told me she didn't feel comfortable coming up here and doing it tonight, so I told her I'd take care of it. But I do want to thank them for their work. A lot of hours went into preparing this budget, and I just want to recognize them publicly. Again, review the presentation. If you have questions, let us know. We'll be glad to answer them. Again, our next meeting is March 7th. I know Ms. Saunders has a work conflict, so if it's okay with the board, I would like to start the meeting at 11. We'll go from 11 to 12:30, break for lunch at 12:30, and then finish them. I think you'll be here 12:30-ish. And then we can do from 1 o'clock until you're at a point you feel like you're at a good place to adjourn after that, if that's satisfies the board. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer some, but you might want to.
Thank you, Dr. Wells. Board, anything right off the bat that you, there's a lot to digest, so, we can take, like I said, the next week to move home through it and see what we do have and questions, and we'll get together from there.
Dr. Wells, so as you guys prepared the budget, I know this is our worst-case scenario.
Correct.
Do you feel like you put everything in the budget that you need to ensure the success for the next school year? Are there things, I guess what I'm asking, are there things that you would really like to see in the budget, but didn't?
I would like to see a guaranteed 3% pay increase for staff.
Sure.
I mean, but when we looked at the numbers and the positions we currently have in CARES, and I didn't feel comfortable saying, you 5 people, your job's disappearing, but I'm going to give a 3% raise to everybody else. Sure, I'd love to have that. Talking with the county and just personally, last year they gave us an increase of about $2.5 million for our operating budget. Then they also came back and fully funded the high school project. So I was a little uneasy going to the county administrator and saying, I need $1.2 million again this year. We've had that conversation, but he knows that would be great. But I felt uneasy putting that into the budget as a definite ask, especially once the Senate and House versions came out showing the 3% in their versions. So I guess if the House and Senate versions don't come through like they're projected, then we may have, that's a discussion we have as a board on the retreat and say, do y'all want me to look at the pay increase? I mean, but I really didn't feel comfortable going to the Board of Supervisors right now, given.
And again, my question is just around
Yeah.
wanting to make sure that you're able to get the things that
Yeah.
you think we need. as
From
school
a
division.
staffing area, yes, I feel good about our staffing. We're adding those positions in the elementary and the reading specialist at middle. I think those are things that will help us. Looking at our populations, I don't see us having class sizes that are too large with our student population, so I feel good there. But again, I would, if I had my dithers, I would say I would love to be at the 3% or 4% out there for our staff.
Anything else, board? Okay, well, we all have a little homework to do, so, once we get something, we'll get it to you.
All right, thank you, sir.
Board, anything else for Dr. Wells and staff?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
That moves us on to 3.01.
Make a the motion that we approve, I mean.
Sure.
Approve the budget.
Easy now, easy now.
Approve the
I
budget.
second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you.
That'd be fast.